Hey, welcome back to the show. I'm John F. Gately. You can call me Jack, joining you here from beautiful Plymouth, Massachusetts, behind enemy lines. So last night on Tucker Carlson, there was a great episode right off of the beginning of the show where basically Tucker took the isolationist, America first, what's in it for America position, and Maria Salazar, is it Maria? Maria, I think. The congresswoman from Southern Florida took the neocon position that we got to go into Ukraine and this is what we got to do, which is now the consensus in the country, right? The isolationist, Trump, let's not go too far, America first, stay at home. That is distinct minority. And whether you're a liberal con or a neocon, pretty much everybody is, pro-war in the Ukraine. I pulled up to my kids' school today, a big sunflower outside, which I think is the national flower of Ukraine. I think it's also the state flower of Kansas, where I was last year. Everybody is wearing, not me, but tons of people are wearing the blue and yellow. It's even St. Patrick's Day. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And people are wearing blue and yellow, the Ukrainian colors, not St. Patrick's Day. Although I don't have any green on. I do have a green fleece because it is St. Patrick's Day, and I am mostly of Irish heritage, best of my knowledge. All right, so let's take a look at 4 parts of last night's interview with Tucker and Salazar, because they really are how do I want to say this? A perfect dichotomy between America First versus neocon. And there were 4 points in last night's interview. I want to just kind of cover them. At what point are you playing some type of proxy war versus some type of direct war with Russia? Where is that tipping point? 2, if you're going to go to the direct war situation, have you factored in the percent chance that Putin might actually make that a nuclear war, either tactical or strategic? 3, what have we done in the running up to that to mitigate or de-escalate or negotiate peace? Remember peace? Peace was a nice thing. And 4, if we're willing to do that halfway around the globe in Ukraine to preserve their border, then why aren't we willing to do something equally auspicious and endeavorous, bold, on our southern border with Mexico, where, if you haven't noticed, is effectively a war zone on southern in the Mexico portion. And over the last year, we've been, if you want to use the word invaded, you could say invaded by over 2 million people coming to the United States illegally. And where most of the illegal drugs come over that border, last year, 100,000 Americans died of illegal drug overdoses in the United States, mostly from fentanyl and other similar drugs coming from Mexico. I know they come from farther in South America and come from all over the world, really, but a lot of that comes over the border from Mexico. All right, so let's take the first point. At what point is it a proxy war versus a direct war? Let's listen to Tucker.
Or against us.
Salazar.
And if that happens, then what next? And to not think about that seems negligent, but since you're on the Foreign Affairs Committee, I know that you have thought it through. So tell me your views on what would happen next.
Tucker, we have been providing javelins and stingers and ammunition, and we're providing a lot of military armament. So what is the difference between that and the MiGs and the S-300s?
Well, as I said, it's a huge difference between providing offensive weapons like MiGs. By the way, we didn't actually provide MiGs directly because we don't have Soviet-era fighters. It would be more like Poland or one of those countries giving them to the Ukraine, and then we replacing Poland's fighters with new United States fighters, F-16s or whatever.
What's the difference? I mean, you have to understand that we are, unfortunately,
F-16, whatever the new number is.
the United States has fallen into the Vladimir Putin's trap. He is the one dictating what we're going to do, what we're not going to do. He said, we are imposing a no-fly zone over Ukraine, and we are
so we're letting
abiding by
Putin
it.
control our behavior. Okay, so that seems like a loss right there. Right. Okay, but let me just ask you, because we.
Now, I only buy into that remark if you actually want to go into this war. I think before you allow Putin to control your behavior, you've got to ask yourself, do you really want a direct war with Russia? Do you really want a direct war? Because when you add in the planes, for me, that's the boundary between something that's like a proxy war you're supporting versus you're actively participating. And Tucker asked that question, at what point are you actually, and this is the second time he's asked this question, at what point are you proxy versus direct? You know, planes are just not something that just flies in the sky. They've got to land, they need fuel, they need ground crews, they need all sorts of support. For every plane that you see in the sky, not that I'm a military expert, but every plane that you see in the sky, there's boatloads of back office, so to speak, ground crew support to that. Fuel, including fuel, amongst other things. You need bases. So she can't answer that question. And every question that she takes from Tucker that she doesn't like or she doesn't want to answer, she just says it's a hypothetical. Let's skip to where she talks about war with Russia from a nuclear perspective. It's right here.
Risks known to the population in whose name we're doing it. So I'm asking you, what do you think the chances are, and I'm sure you've gamed this out as a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, that Putin uses a nuclear weapon against the United States in response to this? What would you calculate the chances
He can sure that we are taking that into consideration. And
what? He can be sure that we're taking that into consideration? Haven't we already done that? Haven't we kind of gamed that out somewhere at the Pentagon, you know? And apparently she's on the foreign relations. She probably had some idea of what percentage that's a risk. I would hate to see my leaders in Congress, apparently Maria Salazar, and she's a Republican, fumble into this without actually having some ballpark idea of what the risk of nuclear war would be.
What do you think the likely? I mean, our viewers are, I'm sure, supporting you. I think most conservatives are on your side. But I just think they should know what the informed view of the likelihood of a retaliatory nuclear strike from Vladimir Putin is. What would you assess it as being?
And I repeat, that's a hypothetical question. And
she can't answer the question because she doesn't want to, because she's either hasn't thought it out or she doesn't care, which would be even worse. Let's go on to talk, see where she talks about so-called peace. Like, let's see if she's thought about actually
the peaceful
negotiating.
Solution that's already on the table. Are you doing anything
on the table by Zelensky? So Zelensky the other day has proposed a peace plan. How does she feel about it?
The Ukrainians want to go that route. They have the right to, and we are no one to say anything about it because they are the ones dying on the streets, and they're the ones under.
And they certainly are. They certainly are dying. That's right. I don't notice any members of Congress or David Frum laying down their lives. It's the Ukrainians. But have you suggested that?
Tucker, I think that we have talked about.
And Tucker's point here is that the vast majority of the United States Congress and Biden, considering where he is, are not in a they're not positioned to be promoting negotiation, de-escalation, the ratcheting down of tensions. They're not doing any of that. Now, I understand that Putin has invaded Ukraine, and it's horrific, and it's heartbreaking for the Ukrainians. Awful. It's awful. And everybody's seen it on television. It's just absolutely awful. There's no other way to say it. But what are we doing to actually stop that? If we continue to add weapons, if we move towards supplying planes, bases, and all that, which it looks like, that's the next thing. how does the suffering of the Ukrainian people cease? I don't understand how that actually decreases their suffering.
Of this point enough, I also wanted you to give me the opportunity
have?
to explain to you
Well, I
about
wanna
open
ask
borders
you what
because you said that I was in favor of open borders, and I talked to your production.
All right, so now I don't know where she came up with this, but she came up with open borders, and while that just does set Tucker off, let's skip ahead to the point in this show where he actually asks her. He asked her actually multiple times, like 3 different times, about whether she would be willing to send the U.S. military to the southern border, where, as I said, we've been invaded by 2 million people last year. We had 100,000 drug overdoses last year. And those are staggering numbers. Why are not we on the southern border in a manner by which would be to the same level of emergency that we are in Ukraine? Remember, she's a Republican legislator. I understand AOC, and they don't want any of that because, a lot of people benefit from having 2 million people come into the country. In fact, earlier in this video, she actually said if we deported everybody, we'd all starve. What a threat.
The U.S. military securing the United States border tonight, or on the same timetable as sending MiGs to Ukraine. How about that?
So what he's saying is that, hey, if we send MiGs to Ukraine, through Poland cut out, would you send military to Laredo?
That's hypothetical again.
No, it's a very straightforward question. What are you talking? You're a lawmaker.
No, it's not
hypothetical. What do you mean? Just say it. You're not for it, and you're for it in Ukraine, but not here.
You're giving me the first.
She's not for it. Most of the Republican Party's not for it because they're not for securing our border. What does that really mean? It means they don't care about our border. They don't care about the definition of our country. They don't care about Americans. They're willing to risk your life to save Ukraine. They're willing to risk nuclear war, which they have not even yet factored in the chance of how that, of whether that's 1% or 20%. They haven't even done the math. Yet they're willing to risk your life, and they are willing to risk your life and the lives of your own children. But they're not willing to protect your border or protect your kids from overdosing from fentanyl, as the West Point students did just last week. They're willing to do that in Ukraine, but not in the United States. Who do these people really work for? Do they really work for you? Can you be sure that a Republican is really working for you? No, not anymore. You really got to scratch deep to find out who is really in favor of border security, who's really willing to defend the United States. And it's certainly not Representative Salazar. All right, I'm John F. Gately from beautiful Plymouth, Massachusetts, behind enemy lines. You can call me Jack. Have a great St. Patrick's Day. Talk to you later.